Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello and welcome in to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Monday, October 26th. I appreciate you guys listening in. Hopefully you had a great weekend out there. I know I did. On Saturday, college football, I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan. They had the same helmets as my high school did when I was growing up. So apparently when I was just a young lad, I enjoyed watching them on Saturday after rooting for the same helmet on Friday night. And Big Ten football was back opening weekend. Michigan put a thumping on Minnesota. And then Sunday, I didn't have to worry about the NFL because my Birds took care of business on Thursday against the G-Men. Carson Wentz led a crazy comeback. And if you guys fell asleep early Thursday night, you missed a wild one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it out there as well. I know a lot of different things were going on throughout the country. We had some snow out in the Denver, Colorado area. So if you're listening from the Rocky Mountains, man, you guys are already using your shovels, along with Minneapolis from last week had some snow. Well, here in the Northeast, it got cold on Sunday, but on Saturday, it was another beautiful day. So if it's still fall where you're at, enjoy the weather, get outside. And if it's wintertime, kind of like here, it's in transition. I got the hoodies, the long sleeves, had to change up the closet to get ready for the wintertime here. But let's jump into the baseball podcast here, recording Sunday night. So we know we're headed to a Game 6. Somebody has a 3-2 series lead at this point, but no current spoilers, since I figured with today's episode, segment number 1, we'd start out with Game 3. Segment number 2, it'll be Game 4. Segment number 3 will be Game 5. And then we'll wrap up the episode discussing Game 6 and a potential Game 7 based on my prediction. So let's jump into it. Let's relive the weekend here. Friday night, the LA Dodgers-Rays, they played the all-important Game 3. You guys know I talked to you about, hey, I think it's Dodgers in 5 if they're able to win this one, or Rays in 7 if not. And, man, this one was all about Walker Buehler on Friday. He was absolutely fantastic. And we're going to get into some of his individual stats and accolades that he's putting together here through his first couple of postseason starts, 2020 and previously. But let's run through the dynamics of the game. Of course, you had Walker Buehler facing off against Charlie Morton. I had predicted that it would be advantage Morton because he had come into this game winning his last 7 postseason decisions, and he had an ERA of 1.45 over that span. So I thought Morton would continue to stay hot. I know Buehler's a big game pitcher. His October numbers are excellent, but again, I just kind of favored with Morton and what the vibes were telling me. But right off the top of the bat, top of the first inning, everything went out the window. I mean, this one went to the Dodgers in a hurry, and you could kind of just see, if you were watching in detail, that Morton was off from the start because, yes, he did get the first 2 guys, but then Turner went deep in the top of the first for a 1-0 lead for the Dodgers, but he hit a 1-2 fastball that was basically over the heart of the plate. And I know it was up in the zone. Morton likes to work up in the zone and then low and away with that breaking ball to right-handed hitters, but this one got a lot of the plate, and that's where, man, I was like, ooh, if he misses location like that, he could be in for a long evening here if you're Charlie Morton. And the Rays, they put up a 0, bottom of the first. Dodgers went 1-2-3, same with the Rays in the second inning. And then ultimately it was the third inning where the Dodgers were able to strike again, and this time it was with a 2-out rally. I mean, Morton gets Barnes and Betts to strike out looking and swinging, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, and then Seager gets hit by a pitch, which leads to a Turner double. Then at this point, you have second and third and 2 outs, an open base, and Max Muncy, who's a left-handed hitter, currently in the batter's box. And watching this live, I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't know if I'm attacking Muncy in this situation. And Muncy's a really good hitter, so he typically doesn't chase pitches out of the zone, which is why I don't know if I'm going to mess around with this. And you saw that Morton was trying to get him to chase because he threw nothing but off-speed pitches, more or less. He went cutter, curve. He mixed in a fastball at 2-1, but missed with that one. And then he went cutter, and ultimately a 3-2 pitch with the cutter. It's a single, a 2-run single to center field. And you're thinking to yourself, man, if we didn't put him on, we got the right-handed hitter Smith on deck, who ultimately flies out. We could have went bases loaded. We could have gotten out of that with no damage, and now it's 3-0 Dodgers heading to the bottom of the third inning. So that's a decision that Cash will have to live with. Tampa Bay, of course, second-guessing that one after the game in a bit more detail. But live, I was thinking to myself, oh, man, Smith, I know he's a good offensive catcher. He's been effective for them. Max Muncy, his average is down. But just in that moment where you're trying to get him to chase, I don't think Muncy's the guy that you're going to be most successful with in doing that. And the Rays now down 3-0. They were looking to bounce back in the bottom of the third, but they went down 1-2-3 again against Walker Buehler. Haven't been able to get anything going as they have been no hit through 3 innings at this point. And then once again in the top of the 4th inning, the Dodgers play a little bit of small ball to get things going. Bellinger led off the inning with a single. Strikeout follows him. Peterson singles. And then you have a first and third situation where Austin Barnes, your catcher, who's really in for defensive purposes here in Game 3 to catch Buehler, make sure he's on track. He puts down the safety squeeze in the 4th inning. And at Lehigh University, my coach loved the safety squeeze. He was a big small ball guy, so we practiced it offensively a ton, especially for the guys down in the lineup who struggle a bit more to basically one-out guy on third if you can put the ball in play or lift a fly ball or have the bat control to not be able to hit the ball to the pitcher or put it essentially where you want it. That's where it becomes effective with those guys who aren't that, who don't have that ability, more or less, right? And Barnes, down at the bottom of the list there, he basically says, hey, I think I'll be able to push bunt one of these sinkers, get a run in, give myself up. It's essentially the same thing as hitting a ground ball deep in the hole to shortstop, and we're going to move out of here and take another run. And it was executed quite well. That's a 4-0 lead at this point. Mookie Betts comes up next. He singles to center field after a nice at-bat. Finally, on the 7th pitch, he singled to center, and it's 5-0 to Dodgers at this point. And with Walker Buehler on the mound dealing the way he was dealing, you're thinking this one's pretty much wrapped up. And he really did coast from that point. I mean, the Rays went 1-2-3 in the bottom of the 4th again. Wasn't until the 5th inning they got their first hit. Walker Buehler was carrying a no-no through 4 until ultimately Margot doubled to left field, and then Adames doubled him in to make it a 5-1 game through 5 innings. And, people really coasted from there. There wasn't much going on. Barnes came up again in the 6th inning. He went deep. So Austin Barnes comes up, sack bunt, safety squeeze. Next at-bat takes him downtown to center field. And when your backup catcher, who's known for his defense and not for his offense, is giving you multiple RBIs and home run, I mean, come on. What else could you want if you're a Dodgers fan? And if you're a Rays fan, you're in for a long night at this point. So the score remains 6-1 until the bottom of the 9th inning when, of course, Randy Arozarena decided to join the party here in the World Series. He hit a home run to left field, 397 feet. He hit a 93-mile-an-hour sinker. It was a bullet out to left down the line, and this was his 8th home run of the postseason, which tied him with 3 other guys for the most in the history of a single postseason. And these other guys are pretty solid names. I mean, you're looking at Nelson Cruz, who did it in 2011, Carlos Beltran, all the way back in 2004, and then you have Barry Bonds back in 2002. So 3 really good baseball players right there with a rookie in a Rosarena. So we'll see if his career basically emulates these three other guys who, if they're not Hall of Famers because of this, that, or the third reason that's going on with all of these guys here, they're very much Hall of Fame quality careers if they're not enshrined into Cooperstown. But the Dodgers win the ever-important Game 3. Just a crazy outcome in regards to Walker Buehler, but maybe it shouldn't have been. Maybe we should have expected this more. Maybe I should have expected this a bit more, because we've all seen Charlie Morton, big game Morton, Game 7 victories, all this playoff success. Well, Walker Buehler is very quietly, and maybe not after Game 3, and especially not if we see him be successful again in a potential Game 7. But with his success in Game 3, he's putting his name right up there with the greats of October. I mean, Buehler's only 26 years old. He's in his third season in the major leagues, and his playoff resume is already putting him with the names of, Kurt Schilling, Randy Johnson, Earl Horshiser, Madison Bumgarner, Josh Beckett, Sandy Koufax. All of these guys, depending on what statistical category you're looking at or how you're utilizing these numbers, are right there with Buehler at the top of a lot of these lists. And just for example here, and we'll get into some bit more detail, but lowest ERA over the course of a 9-start span in the postseason. So 9 starts, lowest ERA. Let's put Walker Buehler. He is currently 4th all-time, and he is behind Curt Schilling, number 1 at 1.14, Hershiser, number 2, 1.17, and Bumgarner, 1.18. So Buehler's 4th on that list with his current run of 1.28. So clearly, the guy has not been touched up over the past 9 starts. Now, this is a bit subjective because it is a different game being played here. Buehler has thrown just under 50 innings in those 9 starts, as opposed to the other 3 guys who went 71, 69, and 68 innings over the course of their 9 starts. So 10 to 15, 20 innings difference when it comes to the ERA and potential to give up runs. But of course, Buehler, he's just a subject of the game in 2020 and can't dictate how starters only go 5 innings, 6 innings. And I think he could have went further in this matchup, but ultimately decided to pull him out. So he's been, fantastic. And his 80 strikeouts now among pitchers who are age 26 or younger is tops in all of baseball. So he's reached 80 on Friday. That passed Madison Bumgarner for the most age 26 or younger in the postseason. And once again, the little asterisk there is there are more playoff games and more playoff rounds here in 2020, so more appearances for Walker Buehler by the time he was 27 years old to get to that number of 80. So there are a bit of caveats here with some of these statistics, but overall, you guys get what's going on. I mean, Buehler 1.2 ERA over 9 starts, 80 strikeouts over 9 starts. The guy has clearly been fantastic in the postseason, and I mean, even more specifically in the World Series. He now has 2 starts in the World Series. This one, 6 innings, 1 run, only 3 hits allowed. And then his previous World Series start at the age of 23, back in 2018, he went 7 scoreless against the Boston Red Sox, only giving up 2 hits. So his line in the World Series reads 13 innings and 1 run for a .69 ERA. And I don't know how many innings you got to qualify for whatever list you're trying to put together, but .69 ERA in your World Series career is fantastic no matter how many innings you're throwing, whether it's 2 innings or 18 innings. That's a great number. But his career postseason ERA in 11 games, he's gone 61 in the third innings, giving up 16 runs for 2.35 ERA. So Walker Buehler needs to be talked about in that conversation of the best young pitcher in baseball and perhaps the best young pig game pitcher in baseball. I know there's a lot of guys out there this year, a lot of young studs up and coming, but Buehler, and quietly, because on this Dodgers team, there's always names in the rotation. You always have Kershaw, you got May, you got, all these guys who are filling up the stat sheet, throwing 100 miles an hour, and then Buehler is just continuing to put in these excellent starts in October baseball. And I myself, it opened my eyes after Game 3 to dive in a little bit more, specifically into Buehler, to try to learn, hey, has this guy really been this good? I mean, what are we looking at here? And he's been a true difference maker for the Dodgers over his October career. So the Dodgers take a 2-1 series lead in a huge game that they won on Friday. That was never really close. Like I said, it was 5-0, then 6-1 for a long time, and Arozarena was really the only bright spot for the Rays offense, hitting his 8th postseason home run. But this leads us into a huge Game 4. Now that LA has won Game 3, my prediction, Dodgers in 5. And I'm thinking they take Game 4. It looks like it'll be Urias versus Yarborough in a what I call a must-win matchup for Tampa Bay. I don't think if they go down 3-1 with that rotation over there in Dodger Blue, they're going to have must have a chance to come back. So that'll do it here for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we'll talk about Game 4. We'll let you guys know what's going on. Will it be 3-1 Dodgers or 2-2 Rays? Stick around, find out.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, and thanks again for listening to today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It's Monday, October 26th, and we got a great episode for you here today. In the first segment, we touched on Game 3. Now here in segment number 2, we're talking about Game 4, and man, oh man, Game 4 was one of the best baseball games that's been played in recent memory. I mean, it was fantastic. It went back and forth, and the ending we're going to get to, we're going to discuss all of that, what went down, how it went down, why it went down. I'm going to let you guys know my thoughts on the entire play, but before we get to even that point, the game up until then was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was back and forth, both teams scoring, a lot of offense. It was just entertainment to its core Saturday night, and I'm glad I stayed up till midnight to watch the end of it because I was struggling there towards the end. A long day Saturday, family was down, stuff around the house, a bunch of football games, but man, oh man, am I glad that I do this podcast, and that's really the reason I stayed up to talk to you guys about what was going down. But in the top of the first inning, that's where it started once again. Turner, he went yard for the second straight night. And like we touched on in segment 1, this one here was his, 12th for the postseason in Dodger Blue. That was the first now in history of the Dodgers. And it passed Duke Schneider, who had 11 on the list. So Turner now the all-time franchise leader in postseason home runs for the Dodgers. Pretty impressive there. Let's see. In the second inning, Mookie Betts made a heck of a play defensively to keep it scoreless at 1-0. And then in the third inning, the Dodgers were able to score once again as Corey Seager hit a home run to right field. And this was a big home run because this was Corey Seager's 8th home run of this current postseason. And I touched on and talked about multiple times Randy Arozarena being a video game, being locked in, doing ridiculous things with a baseball. Well, Corey Seager just joined that club of 8 home runs, and so we can add him to the list. And we might as well repeat it for you here once again. It now includes Arozarena, Nelson Cruz, Carlos Beltran, and Barry Bonds as the only people who have hit 8 home runs in a single postseason. And Corey Seager, out of all of those guys, did it in the least amount of plate appearances. He only did it in 69 plate appearances. So his 8 could be most impressive out of anybody's. And then in the fourth inning, Randy Arozarena basically saw Corey Seager put up his 8th home run and said, no. This postseason is all about me, and that's only going to last one at-bat where you're tied with the leaders. And he went deep in the 4th inning for his 9th home run of the postseason. So literally one at-bat later for Arozarena, Seager had tied him, and he said, all right, this is only going to last about half hour of real time here and only one at-bat, so the next time I'm able to advance it, I'm going to. And at this point, it is now 2-1 through 4 innings with the Dodgers still in the lead. But this is where things start to pick up offensively. And without getting into detail, it was just bottom of the 4th, Rays score. Top of 5, Dodgers. Bottom 5, Rays. Top of 6, Dodgers. Bottom 6, Rays. Top of 7, Dodgers. Bottom 7, Rays. Top 8, Dodgers. Bottom 9, Rays. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth from here on out. And it was so entertaining at this point because Arozarena homers to make it 2-1. Then the Dodgers right back in the top of the 5th. Max Muncy, he singled in Corey Seager. Muncy got thrown out at second, trying to extend the single into a double, but ultimately the run scored before he was thrown out. So it is now 3-1, heading to the bottom of the 5th inning, and this is where Renfroe hit a home run to left field, and this one was no doubt about it. 95-mile-an-hour four-seam 3-2 fastball right down the pop, 444 into the left deck. The upper deck, I mean, my goodness, that was one of those where you just watch and go, oh, God, he got all of that one. So an impressive deep ball by Renfroe. Then back to the top of the 6th where Kiki Hernandez comes in. He doubles down the left field line. Smith scored, and now it's 2nd and 3rd. But Betts ultimately flies out to center in a big spot there at the top of the 6th. It was 4-2. Betts, 2nd and 3rd, 2 outs. Ultimately able to get out of it once again, keep the score 4-2, and this was huge in this moment because right then and there in the bottom of the 6th inning, back come the Tampa Bay Rays, and this is where Brandon Lowe continues to stay hot here in the World Series with his 3rd home run in 4 games, as he had 2 of them in Tampa's Game 2 victory and was the difference there. And we touched on it last episode about the changes to his swing. If you guys are new to the program and this is your first episode, head back, check out Thursday's episode, but we talked about how Brandon Lowe basically sent some video back to some old coaches, high school, college, people he trusts and work with, and they were able to watch the video, kind of compare and contrast to some old video when you're more successful. And for you kids listening, again, take video of when you're going well, save it, and then when you're not going well, take video, reference them. Oh, my hands moved, my bat moved, the angle of the bat, the hips, all of this stuff. And Lowe was able to essentially do that live in the postseason. And he took a 95-mile-an-hour four-seam out to left center to make it 5-2 Tampa Bay. A 3-run home run in the bottom of the 6th inning off of Baez. And, man, it was just like, wow, I thought we were looking at Dodgers in 5. I thought they'd cruise in this game. And now all of a sudden Lowe shows up, and the depth of Tampa's offense continues to show up here because up until this point, Arozarena and his 2 home runs had really been the only offense since Game 2 for Tampa Bay. So the Dodgers in the top of the 7th, they bounced back with a Peterson single to right. This came in with the bases loaded at the time. Let's see here. Seager singled, Turner doubled. So it's 2nd and 3rd, nobody out. And then they're about to get out of it. Muncy strikes out. Smith strikes out as Anderson came in to pitch. He struck out Smith. Then they walked intentionally Cody Bellinger to load the bases for Peterson. And Peterson singled to right field. Seager scored, Turner scored, and then Bellinger was actually thrown out at third base on the play. So the Dodgers made multiple outs on the bases after big hits to score runs, and they could have extended innings, but they were aggressive, and Tampa's defense once again on point. I told you guys the only reason Tampa was able to defeat Houston and actually move on to the World Series was their defense, and it shows here again, really not in the box score or not in the highlights you don't see, but another hit. Hey, we gave up a hit, but LA trying to take the extra base is gunned down once again from the outfield, and those extra outs specifically because through 4 games, so heading into Game 5, and, kind of fast-forwarding, but 16 of 25 RBIs for the Dodgers in this series have come with 2 outs. This team has been fantastic hitting with 2 outs, and those are 2 additional opportunities where you would have a man in scoring position with 2 outs to extend leads where you've been successful, and you won't have that opportunity. So Tampa keeping themselves in this game by gunning down the Dodgers, trying to advance bases. But LA back on top here at this point, 6-5 as we head to the bottom of the 7th inning. So 9 outs remaining for your Tampa Bay fans, and this is where Kiermaier, he comes through. He hits a home run to right field. He jumped on a changeup that was left up in the zone, and Kiermaier hit it out. It is now 6-6 through 7 innings. So after that, it is all tied as we head to the top of the 8th. And Taylor leads off the inning with a double. Hernandez pops up the bunt. Betts grounds out to short. And then ultimately, runner on second, 2 outs. Here you go. Corey Seager singles to left center. A bloop hit over the shortstop's head. Taylor scores on it to give L.A. a 7-6 lead heading to the bottom of the 8th inning. And in the bottom of the 8th, this is the first half inning, and I think 8 half innings. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 half innings in a row. A run was scored up until the bottom of the 8th inning where Tampa went down. They didn't go 1, 2, 3 as Choi walked to lead off the inning and Adame singled. So they had runners on first and second, but Renfroe flied out to right field. The Dodgers went pretty quietly in the 9th inning. Peterson did single, but really no threats there. And ultimately, we get to the bottom of the 9th inning, and where the absolute chaos breaks loose. The most ridiculous play I can think of to end a game happens in maybe the history of baseball, because, we've all seen the walk-off home runs, the walk-off doubles, heck, even walk-off singles, walk-off walks, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know if I've ever seen a walk-off single air 2 runs scored to end a World Series game, nonetheless. But Hanley Jansen came in for the Dodgers with a 1-run lead. So if you're a Dodgers fan out there, I knew you were already, sitting up in your seat and you weren't, feeling too good about yourself. But he was able to get a leadoff strikeout, get the first out relatively quickly. Next up was Kiermaier. He singled on a first pitch to center field, a 92-mile-an-hour cuddle. And then Joey Wendell lined out to left field. So still at this point, runner on first, 2 outs. Okay, Jansen, he's feeling good. Randy Arozarena, of course, is up to bat, and you don't want to let him beat you with the long ball. And Jansen honestly battled extremely hard. I mean, he got ahead 0-1. Then it was 1-2 before ultimately Arozarena wrote it to 3-2, fouled off a couple of pitches, and then worked a walk. So now it's first and second. Arozarena's on first. And let's see here. Kiermaier's on second. And the Tampa Bay Rays bring up Brent Phillips, to pinch hit here. And the biggest at-bat of his career, of course. And he works a good at-bat. He gets to 1-2. Gets a cutter over the heart of the plate, and he singles into right center. So that's the most normal part of this entire play, right? So he hits a single to right center, kind of a bloop single. You're thinking, okay, run's going to score. There's 2 outs, 2 strikes. He's going on the swing. It's Kiermaier. He can scoot a little bit. So basically, okay, let's keep Arozarena from advancing from first to third on the play. Well, Turner out in right center, or Taylor, Chris Taylor out in right center. He ends up kicking the ball right off his glove, which then, okay, now Arozarena is certainly getting to third. We just have to make sure he doesn't advance to home on the play. So Taylor out in center. He then gets the ball after kicking it. He looks up to find his cutoff man. Well, his cutoff man in this situation is the first baseman. However, the first baseman isn't in a direct line to home plate because originally where the ball was hit, he would not have been the cutoff man because the throw would go to third base because the run was going to score. So who is it at first base? I think it's Muncy at first base. Was closer to first base than he was actually behind the pitcher's mound or in the middle of the infield. And because of this, Taylor gets the ball. He throws it into Muncy. Muncy cuts it off. But because Muncy cuts it off and he's not directly squared away to home plate, Smith at home plate, if you watch the replay, it's ever so subtle, but the replay is there because he's off center and he doesn't know 100% that Muncy is going to cut the ball off. Smith is actually away from home plate and more towards the on-deck circle, right? Like he's kind of towards the left-handed hitter's batting box. So he's over there. He then sees Muncy's going to catch the ball. He quick hops back closer to home plate. But while he's hopping closer to home plate, this is while Muncy is doing the relay throw and transfer in transition. So he now sees a moving target that he is aiming for, kind of like a quarterback, as opposed to when you're used to it, the catcher standing right there, turn, throw, wherever you see the body or the image, you can turn and let it go. Well, now this image is moving as he's turning to let it go, so he kind of 50-50s the ball, splits the two of them. Well, Smith, now moving from his right to his left, has to reach back across his body to his right to where he was, to where Muncy threw the ball, and because of this, Smith, behind the dish, also is not aware at this moment during this cutoff that Arozarena, rounding third base, trips and falls on his face. Arozarena does a front somerset. What's the word I'm looking for? It's crazy. It's pandemonium, right? So he's doing a somerset front turn down the third baseline. Smith behind the dish doesn't know this, so because he thinks it's going to be a bang-bang play due to the air in right center and the slow transfer to home plate, he quick pulls the glove away, doesn't look it all the way in, and it bounces off of his glove and away to home plate. And now Arozarena is able to spin back once again, get to home plate, and score the run. So a lot of little things went wrong in this moment to ultimately add up that people, if you don't go back and watch it, it's due to Muncy not being centered on the cutoff. Therefore, Smith has to bounce around behind home plate. And because he's doing this, the object's moving. He misses the throw. And then on top of this, you have Kenley Jansen not backing up home plate. But I can't really get on him for that because originally that run's going to score, so he probably should have been backing up third base. And if he's headed over there and then tries to head back behind home plate, he wouldn't make it there anyway. But if it just, oh my God, so much went wrong in one play. I had to watch it 3, 4, 5 times. I kept pressing rewind on the play because you had the air out in center. Okay, no problem. The run was going to score anyway. Now we just know Arozarena is getting to home plate, and you got to be quick with your throw. Hit your cutoff, get it to home plate. He's out by a mile. Well, your cutoff's off center. Therefore, your guy doesn't know he's cutting it. He's got to make sure, and he's moving around, and boom, boom, boom. You got the bad news Bears disguised as the Dodgers out there, and it cost them a victory in Game 4, and now we got a 2-2 series tie and a best-of-3 to crown a 2020 World Series champion. This game, the David Freese game with St. Louis, and I believe it was Texas, where the Rangers had St. Louis down to their final out a couple of times, because the Rays down to their final out, final strike, even in this game, I didn't think they had a shot to come back, but they tie things up at 2, and now it's another, pivotal, crucial Game 5 with Clayton Kershaw on the mound going against Tyler Glasnow in a rematch of Game 1. So is Kershaw going to be able to put together another sharp outing like he did at the top of this series to give the Dodgers once again the lead heading down the home stretch? We'll have to wait and see, but Game 4, man, if you like baseball, I got up, I had so many texts from friends myself where it was just like, man, holy baseball. Like that was far and away the more entertaining game than, some of the NBA Finals, NHL. That was fantastic. Both teams scoring every half inning, back, forth, home run, singles, small ball, just baseball in all its glory. It'll be tough for Sunday night to live up to Saturday night, but that was awesome to watch. So that does it here for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we'll talk about Game 5. Who's got a 3-2 series lead heading into the off day? Stick around. Find out.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Monday, October 26th. I appreciate you guys listening. If you haven't checked us out on social media, please do so. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, both the GSMC Baseball Podcast as well as the GSMC Podcast Network. And wherever you're listening to this, leave us a 5-star rating, write a review. We really appreciate it. That helps continue to spread the word, continue to put us on lists like the one I shared with you guys that has us as, I believe it was, the 9th best baseball podcast available out there for everybody. So, once again, I appreciate it. We are in the third segment, which means we are discussing Game 5. It is currently tied 2-2. It is now a best-of-3 series and a rematch of Game 1 on the pitching mound. We have Clayton Kershaw versus Tyler Glasnow going. And Kershaw, of course, everybody knows his postseason story, the background there, what's going to be taking place. And I did some research for you guys listening out there and looked into Kershaw and his difference between his first appearance and his second appearance in a single postseason series. Because up until this point, he had actually not won more than one game in a single postseason round. His first appearance in the postseason round, he has 102 innings pitched, 42 earned runs for a 3.15 ERA, and then every other appearance after that, second, third, whether it was out of the bullpen, second start, whatever it is, he's gone 65 innings, given up 34 runs for an ERA of 5.44. So an ERA jump of over 2 runs after his first appearance to the second or third time the opposing team has seen him again in overtime. So Clayton Kershaw going in, the odds stacked against him based on his past history. But right off the bat in the top of the first, once again, LA has wasted no time in each of the 3 games getting on the board. In games 3 and 4 in the top of the first, it was a Turner home run. Well, here in this first inning, it was a couple of different hits that ultimately scored 2. And it started with the first at-bat of the night. I mean, Mookie Betts set the tone, an 8-pitch at-bat that ended in a double off a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. And then 2 pitches later, Seager hit a single and scored a run. So 10 pitches in, and L.A. was up 1-0 once again. So they get out to a hot start for the third straight night. Seager went to third on a wild pitch after Muncy walked, and then Bellinger reached on an infield single to make it 2-0, and that wild pitch ultimately costing the Rays a run on the infield single as opposed to just advancing to third base. So 2-0 after the top of the first inning, and you're thinking to yourself, man, that 9th inning last night certainly didn't have any carryover. You know, was LA, were they heartbroken? Are they going to be able to bounce back? Well, what's the mentality of a team that could have had a 3-run lead and almost a chokehold on the series? How do they bounce back less than 24 hours later? Well, you got your answer early on, and it's a positive one if you're a Dodgers fan. So the Rays in the bottom of the first, they went down in order, and then in the top of the second inning, Peterson led off the inning with a home run, 428 feet to dead center on a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. So the Dodgers, they were able to catch up to Glasnow's heater as he left it over the plate early on in the night, and it's a 3-0 Dodgers lead through the top of the second inning. Once again, in the bottom of the second, the Rays were able to get a runner on base, but ultimately went down with relative ease as Kershaw was battling through the first two. The Dodgers, they didn't score in the third. And then in the bottom of the third, the Rays, they turned this one into a game. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, we've seen this before. LA gets out to a lead. Tampa comes back, makes it a game. And then based on a long ball, they've been able to win it or unfortunately fallen short. So here in the third inning, Kiermaier reaches on an infield single. Then Diaz hits a triple to deep right field where Mookie Betts actually made an error in judgment where he thought he could cut off the baseball. Didn't get there. It went all the way to the corner. This allowed Diaz to get to third on the play. This allowed Kiermaier to score. And then the next at-bat, Arozarena, Kershaw kept him in the yard, but he was able to get a single that scored Diaz to make it 3-2 through 3 innings. And it looked like another good baseball game coming down the stretch here. But things kind of stabilized themselves from there, and ultimately the game was determined in the 4th and 5th innings tonight. It was the bottom of the 4th. The Rays had a couple of runners on. Let's see here. Margot walked, and then he stole second base and got to third on an error by the second baseman. Renfroe then walked, so it was first and third, nobody out, in a 3-2 ball game. And then Clayton Kershaw was able to bear down, and you're thinking to yourself, man, this is the point where he blows up. This is where the big number comes into play. He's already given up 2. Maybe he gives up a couple of more here, and ultimately this is the same song and dance we've seen. But it was a different story tonight. It was a different outcome. Kershaw was able to bear down. He got Wendell to pop up on a 92-mile-an-hour fastball, kept him in the infield so no runners were able to score. He then got Adames on a 3-pitch strikeout, slider, fastball, curveball. Good morning, good afternoon, good night type of opportunity from Adames, a little over-aggressive in that type of situation. So now it's first and third with 2 outs. And at this point, the Rays decide to go into their bag of tricks. They decided that, who's hitting at this point after Adames? I forget off the top of my head. I have the play-by-play up in front of me. But, okay, let's see here. Who was it? Margot. So Margot's at third base, and he ultimately tries to steal home. And Kershaw, because of the way he comes set, doesn't visualize the runner on third at all. He's basically staring at the first baseman. And we found out during post-game press conferences that he works on this just based on the way he comes set. Him and the first baseman are very much in tune, and if that guy takes off, the first baseman has to let him know immediately. And it was a very impressive reaction from Kershaw. He was at the top of his set. He stepped off immediately, threw home, and it was a bang-bang play to get Margot. And ultimately, the call out stands and was not challenged because it looked like they got him by just a hair. But ultimately there, I think the empty stadium has something to do with that. If you're in Tampa Bay and they're the home team, I'm not quite sure Kershaw is going to be able to hear the first baseman. So did the neutral site 2020 pandemic non-crowd have something to do with it? Because I think it may have. And you got to take advantage of the situation, but Kershaw very easily able to hear the first baseman step off. He's going. He throws home. He gets there in time. And Kershaw also told us during his interview process after the game that Carlos Gomez had tried this once before while he was in Houston. So he is aware that this is in the scouting report. It could be a potential opportunity. But if I'm the Rays, I know it's still first and third. You got to pop up. You got to strike out. The momentum's back in favor of the Dodgers. But, man, I think you let your guy hit there and ultimately see if he can do some damage. But first and third, nobody out, only down a run. You then go right into the top of the 5th inning where Max Muncy absolutely destroys a baseball. He ran into 99 and hit it out to right field 434 feet to make it 4-2. And this is where everything just kind of coasted. The Rays, you could see, really were deflated after Margot got caught stealing, and it really was crushing for Tampa Bay because you look at their next innings. 11 straight were retired after the guy got caught stealing home. From the 5th, in the 4th inning, you had to pop up the strikeout, and then the 5th, 6th, and 7th, Tampa went down in order. So 11 in a row. Let me get to the 8th inning here, see how they did. I stopped keeping track at that point. Kiermaier singled to lead off the 8th inning. So it was 11 in a row in the middle innings until Tampa ultimately threatened once again in the 8th inning. So bottom of the 5th in order. LA went down quickly in the top of the 6th. Same with the 7th. And then, like I mentioned, the next threat from Tampa Bay came in the bottom of the 8th inning. Kiermaier led off with a single against May, and then Tusogo flew out to left. He hit for Stunino. Gonzalez was brought into pitch by L.A. He ultimately walked Brousseau, so you had first and second with one out, and Arozarena coming to the plate, and this was a big spot. And Arozarena, an aggressive hitter, he's obviously had success, so you can't fault him for attacking the first pitch, because if it's anywhere close to something that he was looking for, you want him to continue to stay aggressive and in that mindset looking to drive the baseball. But first pitch slider flies out to center field. Now it's 2 outs, first and second. And then ultimately Gonzalez is able to get Brandon Lowe to line out to center field as well on a sinker at 93. The first pitch slider was the strike there, according to my notes. So bottom of the 8th inning, first and second, 1 out. Arozarena at the dish. Home run is the lead for Tampa Bay, and Gonzalez wins the battle against Arozarena and Lowe, the 2 hottest hitters in Tampa's lineup. And you knew kind of at that point that was the last hurrah for Tampa, because in the 9th inning there was a leadoff single, but strikeout, flyout, strikeout to end the game, ultimately 4-2. So you got to look back at that 4th inning, 3-2 game, first and third, nobody out, not even able to push home the tying run in that instance. Obviously comes back to beat Tampa Bay, and they go down 3-2 in the series. But where we at up until this point? Let's look at some individuals and kind of their statistics, and who could potentially be the MVP up until this point, specifically just in the World Series. From LA side of things, Mookie Betts is hitting .227 through the 5 games. Corey Seager, .471. He's been fantastic with the bat thus far. Turner hitting .364. He's got a couple of home runs. His name has to be up there and mentioned in the MVP conversation. You have Max Muncy starting to figure things out, hitting .389. Will Smith struggling, .143. Cody Bellinger continues to struggle, hitting .158. Taylor hitting .200. Peterson hitting .400. And then Barnes hitting .100 behind the dish. So the LA offense, it is just a testament to its depth and the amount of different ways that they can win a ball game, because with the fact that Bellinger's hitting $158, Will Smith, who's been good for them offensively, .143, and Mookie Betts hitting .227. If you told me Bellinger and Betts were going to be hitting, a combined average .180 for the World Series, I probably would have told you the Dodgers are having a tough time scoring runs, because these are 2 guys who have been key cogs in their offense thus far, who really haven't given them anything here over the course of 5 games. And it goes to show the strength of their pitching staff. Once again tonight, the final line for Kershaw, 5 2/3, 2 runs, 5 hits. And one last tidbit of information we got in the post-game interview was that the Dodgers' plan for Kershaw was to face 21 batters tonight. And it didn't matter if that was 7 innings facing the minimum, or if it was 3-4 innings, 4 runs, 21 batters. And after 21 hitters, Roberts comes out of the dugout. He goes out to get Clayton Kershaw, and they stuck to their plan. So this is a couple of different times throughout the postseason we've seen a team have a plan, and regardless of how that player looks or how the game is going up until that point, stick with that plan and be rewarded for that action. We saw it with Tampa Bay in Game 7 against the Astros, removing Charlie Morton after only 65, 70 pitches. And then once again here, L.A. removes Kershaw after only 85 pitches in 5 2/3 with nobody on in the middle of an inning, because he hit that 21 batter rule or limit that they had self-imposed for Game 5. And another note on Kershaw, he now has 207 postseason strikeouts. This is a Major League Baseball record, so he is now number one all-time in postseason strikeouts with 207. That flashed on the television as the postgame was coming across the board here late on Sunday night. But Clayton Kershaw, the big story, of course. The Dodgers' depth in offense continues to show itself. A couple of home runs once again for them here in Game 5, and then ultimately missed opportunities. If you're a Tampa fan, is the story of Game 5. They battled back once again, 2 runs on 7 hits for Tampa, 4 runs on 6 hits for L.A., so a competitive game, but L.A. got the big hits that Tampa was unable to get. But we now have an off day here on Monday for the World Series, second off day for quote-unquote travel day, even though, of course, neither team is traveling. L.A. will now switch back to the home team for Game 6 and 7 after Tampa was the home team for the 3-game set over the weekend. But, my prediction there, I was off. I had it at this point 3-2 Dodgers if it was going 7. But I missed Games 4 and 5 there because I didn't count on that epic comeback in Game 4. I thought L.A., they'd win Game 4, they'd win Game 5, and because of Game 3, like I told you guys all along, this series would be over. But a blown save by Kenley Jansen, 2 more errors in the outfield, and now we're getting a Game 6 on Tuesday where Blake Snell looks to be opposed by Gosselin on LA's side of things. So that wraps things up for the third segment here of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause one last time here for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, and then when we come back, I'll preview Game 6 for you guys, give you my prediction on whether or not we're going to see the best 2 words in all of sports, and that's Game 7. Stick around, everyone. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. I appreciate you guys listening in. As always, follow all the other shows within the podcast network. I know I plug something early in every segment. This time, it's all the other shows, whether it's football, fantasy football. I myself fell to 3-3 on the year in fantasy. Had a tough weekend this weekend. Running backs didn't want to show up. Ezekiel Elliott, ooh, buddy, man, I don't know what's going on down there in Dallas. A lot of tough stuff behind the scenes as well, so he's been struggling the past couple of weeks, and I don't know if the future looks any brighter. So if you're into football, college football, or it's politics, news, books, cars, whatever it is, there's a podcast for you. So check that out. Let me know which one you guys enjoy the most as you leave a comment for the show wherever you're listening. But where are we at here? Fourth and final segment. Let's wrap up the weekend quickly. Game 3, we touched on in the first segment. LA got off to a 2-1 series lead. Game 4, one of the wildest World Series in memory, or wildest World Series games in recent memory, that is. And the Rays pulled off a crazy 8-7 victory. And then in Game 5, LA comes back. They win the game 4-2 here on Sunday night, and they set themselves up to be in control heading into Game 6 and 7 on Tuesday and Wednesday, following a day off here. So what does Tampa Bay need to do to be able to pull this out in 7 games? Because up until this point, they had the Brandon Lowe game in Game 2, multiple home runs, ultimately ended up pulling out a close game in Game 2. Then they had Game 4, where they won 8-7, where they got contributions from Lowe once again, Arozarena. Let's see here. Renfroe went deep as well. So scoring runs is what they need to do, because LA's offense being held to 4 runs is one of their low marks of the series. Now, Offensively thus far, Diaz at first base, he's hitting .364. Will they go with Diaz or will they go with Choi? Choi's been struggling in the series, hitting $143. You then have Brousseau off the bench as well, hitting .400 in his limited at-bats. Randy Arozarena, he's been good, but not as spectacular as he's been in previous series, which is fascinating to say because he's hitting .333 with a couple of long balls, but it just seems to be that he's a tick below that absolute difference maker that he was in the ALCS to carry the Rays essentially to that victory in 7 games because the Astros, minus a couple of fielding errors in Arozarena, looked to be the better team throughout that series, but Tampa was able to win it based on one guy alone who hasn't been carrying them to that level here in the World Series. But Lowe tonight here, he's 0 for 4. He's hitting .143. So really the only time he's been a difference maker is when he's hit the long ball. He hasn't added anything else offensively. He's been boom or bust and struggled most of the postseason. So, I don't see him going 5 for 7 here over the next 2 days, but they're going to need at least 1-2 more long balls if they're going to hang around from him since he's hitting third here in the lineup. You then have Margot hitting fourth. He's been good, 2 for 3 tonight, hitting .400 on the series. Renfroe, 0 for 1. He is .143. Austin Meadows hitting .154. Joey Wendell hitting .133. Adames hitting $176. So, that's it right there in the middle of your lineup. You go Low at third. Your 4 hole's good, but 5, 6, 7, 143, 154, 176, and then some fillers, 133. Just not good for the middle of that lineup in Tampa Bay. You have Kiermaier at the bottom hitting .375. And then Zunino without a hit here in the World Series, and he was 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts in the game tonight. So he is really struggling on the offensive side of things. But on the pitching side, Tyler Glasnow, he has to be a disappointment for his 2 appearances in the World Series. He has been good in the playoffs thus far, but here in the series, 0 for 2 in his 2 starts, 5 innings, 4 runs in this outing, a couple of home runs, and his ERA of 9.64 in the World Series is something, or a taste in his mouth that he is not going to like for the offseason. So what does Tampa have to do? Well, they get Blake Snell going here in Game 6, and he'll be going against Gosselin from LA side of things. And, this is where the Rays have to hope that basically getting into a bullpen game for the Dodgers is able to get their offense on track because you have a former Cy Young winner in Blake Snell, a guy who's been good thus far in the playoffs. Snell has for them. He was good earlier in the series for them. So you expect another quality start. Usually it's about 5, 6 innings, a couple of runs, and then you get into the bullpen for the Rays, which will be able to reset after the off day, so you won't have any bullpen arms that are, kind of lagging to the finish like they were in the ALCS, playing 7 games in 7 days. You'll have the likes of Diego Castillo ready to go in his 1.64 ERA in the playoffs. Sledgers, Thompson will be ready to go. Fairbanks, Anderson, all of these guys will be healthy and ready for Game 6. And if Snell can get you through 5, you could put together 4 innings between those 5 or 6 guys and be very effective on keeping the Dodgers off base. So from a pitching side of things, you counting on Snell to get you 5, maybe giving up a couple of runs, and then these bullpen arms to keep them to 2 or 3. And then on the flip side, if you're Tampa's offense, you're looking at Gosselin, who will be starting in Game 6, in his ERA of 9.39 in 3 games and 2 starts in the playoffs is something that you're licking your chops at. This guy's given up 8 runs in 7 2/3 over the course of the postseason thus far. You'll probably see Floro after him, who has a 5.4 ERA, and then you're going to get into the bullpen of potentially Gonzalez or May. May threw in Game 5, but he will probably be available again after a day off. Joe Kelly, Alex Wood has 3 appearances, a 1.93 ERA, but the fact that you were able to get them in Game 2 with a very similar lineup and transitioning this into Game 6, I think does favor the Tampa Bay Rays to extend this game. And then you throw on top of that, of course, the hardest game to win is the game to finish any series. So the fourth game, the fourth victory of any series is the hardest game to get because the other team has their backs against the wall. And if they lose, they're going home. The year's over. There's, of course, all of that kind of energy pent up for the Rays. So I think Game 6 is advantage Rays. I do think that they're going to get the victory in Game 2 behind Blake Snell and take advantage of this Dodgers rotation and advance this to a 7-game series. And with the year 2020 and the baseball season that we've had, I mean, it's already October 26th, which is insane to think about. You know, I've been with you guys here in the GSMC podcast network since the month of March when spring training was just starting. We were just about to talk baseball. Everything shut down. And now, fast forward 7 months later, we talked through the collective bargaining agreement, everything going on there, regular season, playoffs, World Series. And here we are with 2, maybe 1 game left of actual baseball. And I just can't believe how fast it's flown by. So maybe it's a little bit of biased by me to just want to watch as many games as possible. But for the last 5 minutes here, let's preview a Game 7 that I think is going to be taking place. And this becomes another fantastic game and another fantastic outing between Walker Buehler and Charlie Morton. And you guys know all of the stats now on Walker Buehler that I touched on here at the top of the show, as he was the difference in Game 5. Well, he'll be going again in Game 7 based on off days and availability. So, man, it'll just be fantastic to watch Morton and Buehler go at it. But if the Dodgers do win, whether it's 6 or 7 games, in my opinion, truly I think the odds will be higher if it is 6 games. But I think it'd be hard to give the World Series MVP to anybody other than Clayton Kershaw after what he's done in the series, 2-0. The first time he's won 2 games in a single postseason series in his career, which is an absolutely fascinating statistic with the amount of postseason appearances he's had and the amount of games that he's pitched in, even as a relief pitcher, to not come in, get a couple of outs, get out of the inning, and have your team take the lead in the following half an inning, and kind of we call that snake in a victory, so snake in a W, but 2-0, a 2.31 ERA in the World Series in those 2 games. Those 2 games, arguably the most important games of the series. Game 1 getting out to a 1-0 series lead, and then Game 5, of course, getting out to a 3-2 series lead. So Clayton Kershaw, in my opinion, the leader in the clubhouse for MVP. From the offensive side of things, I mean, Jock Peterson, would his name be in there? Max Muncy and Corey Seager, I think, would be the 3 gentlemen you're talking about. Maybe Turner if he puts together a quality Game 6, since he has a couple of long balls. But those are your 3 leaders. So if you're looking at the gambling websites out there, whether it's Rivers Casino, who's a friend of the program here, a friend of the network. So if you're looking to gamble, head to Rivers. I think Clayton Kershaw, although his ads definitely skyrocketed after tonight's outcome, or, slimmed, I guess, however you want to word it, or looking at it. Like I always say with the iPhone, do you swipe up to go down, or do you just swipe down? How do you communicate that to somebody over a podcast? But from the Tampa side of things, potential MVP winners, if this does in fact go 7 games, even if they get a great start out of Charlie Morton in Game 7, I think his earlier start in the series would limit his potential to get the MVP award. And really no pitcher on the staff has been excellent, unless you get 7-8 scoreless innings out of Blake Snell tomorrow night. I think it eliminates the pitching staff. And you're going to head to the offensive side of things where, once again, your options are limited to this point. I mean, Kiermaier hitting .375, Margot's hitting .400, and Arozarena hitting .333 with a couple of home runs. So I think Arozarena would be the leader in the clubhouse just based on kind of the cumulative postseason that he's put together, the ALCS MVP, and now the leader by himself with 9 postseason home runs, although Corey Seager will try to add one more long ball to add his name to the list, as he got to 8 in Game 4 there, I believe it was. But, man, this series as a whole, it's kind of gone how I thought it would, to be honest with you guys. I mean, I was all over those first couple of games And really, Game 4 is the only one that I've gotten wrong to this point. I had some starting pitchers mixed up. I thought Kershaw would go 2, Buehler going 1 like they had up until this point. But the Dodgers took Game 1 like I told you they would. So hopefully you took the money line there and made some cash. The Rays came back and won Game 2 like I said they would. Hopefully you won some cash. I then told you in Game 3 I was feeling Rays. So ultimately I lost money on that one. But the Dodgers won Game 3. The Rays came back to win Game 4, and the Dodgers win in Game 5 to make it 3-2. And without a crazy ending to a game, a blown lead, a couple of errors like I talked about, this would be over. Dodgers in 5 pending that Game 3 victory. So I was a crazy end of a game, 1 strike away from nailing this series front to back for you guys. But ultimately, God came down and said, hey, the baseball gods want us to get another 9 innings of baseball here on Tuesday. And then that way, Wednesday night, when I talk to you guys again, we'll be able to talk about a World Series champion. Now, will it be the LA Dodgers? Will it be in 6 games, 7 games? Or will it be the Tampa Bay Rays, ultimately in 7 games? And honestly, to conclude today's episode, the Rays coming in, I think they're 3-6 in their last 9 games. Now being 1-3 to end the Astros series and 2-3 now. So yeah, 3-6 in their last 9, just not playing great baseball, really struggling offensively to get that big hit. And then on the flip side, the Dodgers, they were down 3-1. They won 3 straight. So they're 6-2 in their last 8 games, playing great baseball. But Game 6 lines up in favor of the Rays. Game 7 goes to Buehler-Morton. So I'm going to flip my pick here. I'm going to jump on the other side of the fence. New information has been brought to my attention, so I will be changing my decision. I do think it goes 7, but ultimately I'm going to take the Dodgers because Walker Buehler was that impressive. So I'm going against the history of Charlie Morton, and I'm going to live in the world of what have you done for me lately and take Walker Buehler in Game 7 over Charlie Morton. But honestly, part of me would not be surprised if the Dodgers ended tomorrow. If they once again in the first or second inning are able to get to Blake Snell and they're able to get a lead and utilize that pitching staff, they could close it out. But I'm, my gut here as we pass 12:30 Sunday into Monday on the East Coast is telling me that we're going to see a Game 7, but the Dodgers are going to win their first World Series since 1988. So the first time in my lifetime since I came in January of 89, a few months after the Dodgers won, it'll be my fault here. So I'll take blame, all you Dodgers fans, but the curse shall be lifted as the Dodgers will win in 7 games. But it was a fantastic week of baseball. I hope you guys enjoyed watching those 3 games as much as I did. I know it's late. I know it's hard to stay up. Game 6 at 7:30 if you're on the East Coast. That's good news as we're recording again past 12:30 here. But I love baseball. I love talking to you guys, so I'm happy to do it here. But that'll wrap it up for today's episode. I appreciate you guys listening once again. Please share, rate, and review the podcast. Check us out on social media. But hopefully you had a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys once again on Thursday when we'll have a World Series champion to talk about. I'm looking forward to it. Have a good week out there, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.